What is the worst thing that you've seen a co-worker do and still avoid being fired? A guy at the plant I work at scrapped $360,000 in airplane parts because he didn't even bother to look at the work instructions. He just drives a forklift now. He tried to run over a security officer with his car when the security officer told him he couldn't park where he wanted to park. Almost succeeded. 2. Stole a bunch of Mark tools. They were painted white. Showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with said tools in the background. Gets reported. Boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me." Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details back statements from one company to their direct competitor. Worst co-worker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing shitty when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it. And said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. That's middle management material right there. Had a co-worker as a standard business practice falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure homeowners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I couldn't do anything as I had no direct proof, but he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the poop out of him. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door. But the owner is so ancient and out of touch I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. Removed. Got caught with CP on his work computer. Had access to the OSINT taken away but wasn't fired as a sign it's possible he didn't know it was real CP. Edit. Just to clarify a few things. 1. This was about 15 years ago at a public institution in Canada. 2. CP is child PRN. 3. Upper management was terrible in so many ways. 4. I talked to a friend who was in the RCMP. She said to me reporting him would lead to the institution lawyering up and an internal investigation would happen. That's all because likely upper management erased the HD and left no paper trail. See number 3. 5. He used Kazaa, an ancient P2P. How is there no criminal legal action taken against him? The FBI tends not to care whether you knew or not. As they should. Oh man. It was winter time and she was helping a customer by carrying something they had purchased out for them. Once outside, but still on the store property, she slipped and sustained an injury. Was threatening to sue the business and was also trying to claim workers' compensation. Came into work every day with a sling on her arm and constantly wincing and being in pain. Anyway, HR and the store manager call her into a meeting. Sit her down and show her the video surveillance from outside, which she obviously didn't know was there, showing her faking her fall. I don't know everything, but she got called out hard and she broke down and admitted everything. For some reason they kept her on. She then tried it again like 6 months later, this time claiming that a customer had something from their cart hit her or fall on her or something. Again. Tried to claim workers' comp and had this whole show of being injured. They pull up security footage again and disprove her injury claims. She still wasn't fired. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send dick pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop or they'd take it up with management and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it and my wife went to management with everything and said this guy's out or I'm quitting. Well, She quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 oil climb it into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously. I never saw him again. Edit. I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. Edit number 2. I'm very sorry that I misspoke. I was an assistant to the manager. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds, because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. Nothing. Documenting work as completed when no actual work had been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or reprimand. Eventually, management changed, figured out no work was being done, called it fraud, and canned them. The job was easy too, and good money. I don't get why they didn't just do the work. Job's even easier if you don't do it at all. Full on sexual harassment. Little backstory. I work in a private country club style dining banquet event space. A drunk on the job manager pinned an hourly server against the wall during a nighttime wedding reception. She punched him in the ribs and tried pushing him off of her. We all saw it. We all reported to HR. Another manager physically removed him off of her. This was about 4 months ago and he's still in his position. She quit due to him telling everyone she'd lied about the entire situation. One of my former co-workers, she's since been fired for stealing customers' lottery winnings, told an elderly woman that she was stupid for not knowing how to pump gas. This woman's husband had recently passed and he had always pumped the gas for her, so she never learned. I had horrible second-hand embarrassment when the woman came in and told us. We relayed it to the manager. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as HR, and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and have the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I am that guy. AMA. He was caught selling cocaine on work premises. Everyone was talking about how he's going to get fired. For a week. Then everybody seemed to have forgotten. Helps if the owner is your kid's godmother. Eat weed. Urinate outdoors on garbage cans in public. Masturbate and drink on the job. Was your co-worker a goat or something? Not giving patients their medication at the right time and generally not giving a FCK about them. Full stop. I work in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days assuming all was well. All was not well. At all. The dehumidifier crapped out while the plants were being hung to dry and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point every single plant was coated in mold and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note. I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now and am mad all over again. That one guy was able to make that mistake and cost you over $1 million seems more like a management problem to me. I work in a garden center. This just happened today. Buddy has worked today, of his scheduled shifts in the past 2 weeks. He calls in all the time, leaves a message with the cashiers, and hangs up before a manager can talk to him. On the off chance he does show up, He doesn't do anything besides move some plants around. Hell. My mom was walking through the garden center today and saw him squatted behind a stack of plants playing on his phone. Further, the guy takes multiple unauthorized breaks a day and sits in his car for at least an hour because his back hurts. He has had 2 write-ups for missing work and somehow this lazy shitty is still on payroll. He's an asshole towards both co-workers and customers alike. Nothing he's done is as preposterous as some of the stories I'm sure are on this thread. But the sheer consistency of his laziness is baffling to me. Obligatory not me but my wife. She had a co-worker that literally punched a customer. Wasn't fired. He later got into a physical altercation with another co-worker. Wasn't fired. Then he wrapped my wife's hair around her throat and play choked her. Still was not fired. Finally, he got into yet another altercation with a co-worker and pulled a gun on him. All while on the clock. Then he was fired. I have a co-worker that has terrible work ethic. He doesn't know how to separate his personal life from his work life, so if he's in a bad mood, which happens often, everyone will know including customers. He's had at least 3 disciplinary meetings. Once he was caught just f***ing around for an hour. Not exactly sure what happened but our boss wasn't happy. Another time he just didn't show up to work without calling in. And it was a day that everyone knew would be busy. I don't know why he hasn't been fired yet. Everywhere else I've worked he would have been gone by now. Drive around the yard on a forklift. No hands on the steering wheel. Firing a nail gun at people and objects around the yard. A coworker jumped out from behind a door at my husband, who is a disabled combat veteran with PTSD. Dressed as if he was from the Middle East. He was literally trying to trigger a flashback. No repercussions. As he was the boss friend. 2 weeks later, he fell down some icy steps and broke both legs. Karma took care of that one. I didn't actually see it, but I have heard so many stories about one of my co-workers. He has left his underwear on the floor in the bathroom. He's eaten cinnamon and hot sauce then threw up. He fell off a ladder. And he dropped a tray full of mugs, about 20 mugs. He quit because he thought he had another job lined up. But he obviously didn't. And then my boss rehired him. There's probably more stories that I can't remember at the moment. Also when he was still in school, he kissed his crush in front of her boyfriend. When someone says idiot, he's the first person to come to mind. Had a co-worker pull a knife and threaten to cut me. He did not get fired. Throw a large container of water out of a work vehicle and hit a motorcyclist. Guy maxed out the company credit card at a casino. Absolutely nothing. I have folks that I send emails to with no answer. I reply weekly. Sometimes 7-10 weeks at a time and they just ignore me. Occasionally I'll walk into their office to ask about them. And they're quite obviously playing video games on their phone or watching YouTube videos on their computer. Yet I'm still held to the metrics that I can't reach because they won't do their part. I worked for an organization that had a small maintenance department. It only consisted of 2 guys. They both hated their jobs and felt underpaid. And were applying to other jobs. They both left work without telling anyone they were leaving to go to the same job interview. On the clock. The job interview also happened to be for a job at a sister location for our office. And they both used our manager as a reference. She got a phone call within minutes of their interviews. And collected their unstamped time cards before they even got back to the office. She had them dead to rights for wage theft. But it also took 2 months to fill any position at our organization because of crushing bureaucracy for job postings. And the lawn needed to be mowed before the weekend. They both got to keep their jobs. They were still working there 6 months later when I left. Who TF leaves a job on the clock and then uses that boss as a reference on an application for the same company? Man, this has me laughing at how dumb they must both be. Had a co-worker that got caught saving customers' private photos to his personal SD card when they brought their cell phones in for service. He just got lectured that it was inappropriate. There are gonna be some savage responses out there, but I work in a pretty professional environment, so the worst thing I've ever seen was my co-worker falling asleep as the head of our department starting announcing layoffs. She was not one of the people who were fired that day and still falls asleep in meetings. I don't work there anymore and I still get updates about where she last passed out and those people that tell me work with her but are not her co-workers. I had a knife pulled on me in the workplace in addition to multiple threats uttered against me. All for being honest and competent. All those people still work there. Carpentry Department. North Vancouver School District. HR dragged them all in after I resigned. And laid down the law. But all those psychopaths still work there around children. I have documentation to prove this. They offered me my job back. I said, hell no. My current boss was the top salesman at the company. He was doing side deals and stealing from the company. The owner called him in to talk about it and somehow he walked out the new manager. I'm the co-worker in this scenario. I dropped an antenna, causing about 15k in damage and labor costs to repair it. Complete negligence on my part and it could have been 100% avoided. My co-worker could have been killed if he had been under it too. Only thing that saved me was that the government reps weren't on location. So they actually took the brunt of the blame. Didn't get fired. Suspended. Nothing. Got a solid ass chewing from the head honcho. But went back to work like normal the next day. On the same project. Definitely cashed in all of my attaboys on that one. Teaching English overseas. One of my co-workers was found dead drunk and stumbling around talking nonsense. This was at 7:30 am in his classroom. Before school was open. His co-teacher stumbled on him passed out in the kiddie coat closet. He must have gotten in at night sometime. When they woke him, he went into rambling speech about how he had to get to the local mall and get his shopping done. Then he walked out of the school and rode off on his scooter. Didn't teach that day. Did not get let go. One of the guys who trained me at my current job straight up totaled a company car because either he wasn't paying attention or fell asleep while driving. He's a corrections officer now. Hit a volunteer with a car in the parking lot of an annual event. Didn't even turn back to look. And walked right inside. I was accounting staff. Had someone brought in to do data entry. His sole job was to take paperwork and enter the relevant details into the accounting software. I went on maternity leave. Returned from maternity leave about 12 weeks later and started getting loads of phone calls and emails from vendors asking why they hadn't been paid. Looked at the P&L. Was like, why the FCK didn't anyone else notice expenses were way down? And why aren't we paying anyone? Turns out data entry guy was entering a couple bills per day. Then chucking the rest into some random file drawer. I had to clean up all his bullshit. Then got reamed by the CFO about having too much expense in the one-time period. Nothing happened to him. He ended up leaving on his own. When his next job didn't work out, they wanted to bring him back. It was a smallish company. And if you were the right religion you were untouchable. Claimed she gave meds to a dog that was boarding with us in the morning. Meanwhile the dog had escaped our facilities overnight. She lied to cover her ass and acted as if the dog was there in the morning. But it wasn't. And it didn't raise alarm bells for her that it wasn't even there. We searched all day for the dog. And thankfully it was found. But the outcome could have been horrible. And she was never even reprimanded. Alcoholic lorry driver. Don't think that requires further explanation. He was taken out of the trucks and put on warehouse duty. Working at BWW I saw so much favoritism from upper management. It was insane. Had one dude get caught selling fentanyl to other employees in the parking lot by our GM, all while on the clock. The guy selling just got transferred to a new store. And those buying got no punishment on the condition that they wouldn't say anything about what happened to anyone else who worked there. Miss a day of work. Show up the next with crutches and cast on foot. Next day no crutches no cast. My employees mostly work in the field but occasionally come into the office. I had an employee show up in the office in the middle of the day hammered drunk. Pass out at her desk. Leave and start to drive home when instructed to wait for the off-site nurse to arrive and administer a test. Get pulled over and a DWI on her way home. She got a 2-month suspension and returned to work on a last chance agreement. She eventually resigned when she was instructed to report for a test she was required to take under her last chance agreement. A child care teacher left a 5-year-old on the playground and forgot about him. In 20 degree Fahrenheit weather,